All right. Is there anyone here that does not know A Course in Miracles that needs me to give you a little background about A Course in Miracles before we get going? And then let me tell you, I have been a teacher and a student for A Course in Miracles of A Course in Miracles for 40 years. I return to it over and over and over again, even though my path has opened up. But it is to me, one of the best spiritual texts that will prepare you for peace. It's got one goal and one goal only, is peace, and it's a non-duality teaching. Thank you, Faith. So this is A Course in Miracles. This is mine. This is not my original one, but it is duct taped and everything. This is not a self-help book. This is a spiritual text that is meant to be read, contemplated, applied. It is a mystical path, like you have a mystical experience. Mystical paths are ones that are not a philosophy, although there is some philosophy in this, to be applied to your life. It's definitely not a religion, because there's no dogma in this. There's no you should do this, otherwise there's a consequence. It can talk about some of that, but that's not a religion at all. People from all religions and no religions will practice A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles has 3 main books. First is a text. The second is the 365 lessons, which we are going to do one of those today. And then there's something called the Manual for Teachers. There's other supplements, but those are the 3 main ones. It has one goal, and one goal is your peace. It is a spiritual mind training which works with your mind to help you to remove the blocks to the presence of love. Boy, that was a lot. That was a lot, but did that answer your questions, everybody? Okay, so we're going to be doing lesson 28. We'll read, I'll talk a little bit. We'll read, I'll talk a little bit. Take a deep breath. Listen, and we'll talk. Lesson 28. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Above all else, I want to see things differently. Today, we are really giving specific application to the idea of yesterday, which is above all else, I want to see. The one before is above else, I want to see. Okay? So the day before, you would have done above else, I want to see. Okay? In these practice periods, you will be making a series of definitive commitments. The question of whether you will keep them in the future is not our concern here. That's big. You will make a commitment in now, but what you do tomorrow is not our concern. It only matters what happens right now with us as we speak this right now, or as you do this lesson, right? So that isn't our concern. If you are willing at least to make them now, make these commitments to this now, you have started on the way to keeping them. And we are still at the beginning. Remember, there's 365 lessons, and this is lesson 28. So you're not even a full month into it, right? Almost a full month. So you're at the very beginning of the lessons. So what he's saying here is, and this is really important, super important, in how the Course in Miracles meticulously and miraculously shifts your mind. And it will shift your mind, and you won't even know that it's happening if you do these every single day. So all that you need to understand from this first part is that right now you're making a definite commitment to something. You don't have to worry about what you're going to do tomorrow. Right now is the most important. Okay? All right, here we go. You may wonder why it is important to say, for example, above all else, I want to see this table differently. In itself, it is not important at all. Yet, what is by itself? And what does in itself mean? You see a lot of separate things about you, which really means you're not seeing at all. You either see or not. When you have seen one thing differently, you will see all things differently. The light you will see in any one of them is the same light you will see in them all. All right, remember when I was talking about separation, when I was talking about addiction, how all suffering comes from separation? This is the same thing. Let's take the pen. Above all else, I want to see this pen differently. Doesn't matter, you can, whatever. I want to see this pen differently. And when he says, in itself, it's not important at all. But what is in itself? And what does in itself mean? This pen, this particular pen, right now in and of itself, is just what it is. But I can tell you that when I see this pen, I think to myself, oh, this is actually a pen that's my favorite kind of pen because it writes so perfectly, and I get them and I refill them with these kinds of ink, and so it's got a very specific meaning to me. So in and of itself, it is just a pen, but I have created a story around the pen, right? So I don't really see the pen. I'm not really seeing the pen. I'm saying, oh, that's my favorite pen. Who or what I put in the refills for because it's my favorite pen, blah, 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 blah. Are you with me, yes or no? I even have some extras right here. Yes, 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 okay? So what he's saying is that in this, you see the story you've created. Thank you, Fleda. Absolutely, right. So when he says, you see, I'm going to read it again. When he says, you see a lot of separate things about you, which really means you're not seeing it all. So this pen and this Diet Pepsi are story, 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 story. I can keep, so I'm seeing all these separate things. So I'm not really seeing what's there. I'm seeing a story after story after story after story. So you're not really seeing. Do you understand? You're not seeing anything. All you're doing is what in psychology would be called projection. You're just projecting all over the place, right? All over the place you're projecting, right? So you don't really see, now let's just take this to the next level. You don't really see your mother. You see the story of your mother. You don't really see Disneyland. You see your story of Disneyland. You don't really see this is why, you know, when something's built up, like say the Eiffel Tower, right? So say it's the Eiffel Tower. You've seen it in movies. You've heard about it forever. And so you have a whole, it's got to meet up to this expectation of this story. And then you go to the Eiffel Tower and you're like, it's a long fucking line. It's kind of cool, but it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. Paris is the city of lights and lovers everywhere. Da, da, da. And you go there and you're like, wow, it stinks. So there's a story about everything. You don't really see the Eiffel Tower. You don't really see France because you have all these expectations and these stories that are creating the thing, right? This is huge, huge, huge. If you don't know, the second lesson of A Course in Miracles, the second lesson is I'm giving everything the meaning it has for me. Take a deep breath. So he goes on to say, you either see or not. When you have seen one thing differently, let's take the pen. when you finally have seen this pen for what it is, then he says, you will see everything differently. The light you will see in one of them will be in all of them. Now, what does he mean? There is nowhere where one thing ends and another thing begins. We know this from science. We know this from science. There's no real border of this pen. Because this thing that's this border of this pen is really a whole bunch of atoms that are connecting with the molecules and the thing. There's no real separation. Do you understand? Right? Let me just take a break for a second. See what's coming up. Fleta says, wow. We've got a couple more paragraphs to go here. So what's coming up for anybody else? You can ask or say anything. Marshall, hello. Rarely do things live up to expectations. Rarely. Of course, rarely. Rarely. Because you have a whole story in your mind. There's a whole story that's going on. And then the real life happens. well, that's subjective. Robert, hello. Robert says, I'm projecting with this phone I'm holding and Inside Timer itself, even this live. That's right, Robert. That's right. That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Leda says, I really wanted to see the Grand Canyon. My daughter said it's just a big hole. You can see it the same way in a picture. You know, that this speaks to the idea of the expectations. And you know, the Buddha says all suffering comes from expectations. Nothing wrong with expectations. Nothing's right with expectations. But expectations will lead to suffering. Because no one's ever going to live up to what you think. And nothing's going to live up to what you think. Right? And the other thing is, if you have a very low expectation of something, then when they exceed it, or it exceeds it, then that's not the expectation either. Right? That's why you never see it. Well, you can't. Accept it for what it is. Accept the person for what they are. Accept the Grand Canyon for what it is. But listen, Fleta, your daughter could have had the whole thing about an expectation. She got there and she's like, it's whole. I can't believe that that's the truth, because I've been to the Grand Canyon a few times and it blows your mind. But that's another story. It's really difficult to see the world differently, especially when it comes to loved ones. Yes, it is, Sue. Yes, it is. This is why the Course in Miracles is helping you. Helping you. Why do you think it's hard with loved ones? Because there's more of a story. You have many years of building up a story about the loved ones. With somebody on the street, you'll give them the benefit of the doubt because you don't know them and you haven't created a story about them. Or on the other hand, you might see someone on the street and have a whole story about that kind of person. I won't say, but do you understand what I'm saying? I think you get it. Expectations are often fabrications, I think. That's right. Yes. So I don't know how to separate the emotions I feel towards something and just see it as what it is. I guess I fear I will lose the beauty by doing that. But you say we will then see the light. Yes, that's right, because you're separating everything out. You want everything to be pretty. Pretty is a judgment. Beauty is a judgment. You don't get to see everything as it is because you want to see pretty. You want to see beauty. That's judgment. It is what it is. There is no beauty and there's no ugly. Everything is exactly what it is. Take a deep breath. Now, A Course in Miracles would say, only love is real. And I will say, because I worked with it for many, 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 many years, only unconditional love is real. Love is a very, 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 is a term that is filled with expectation. Unconditional love is accepting everything as it is. Not what you think it should be, not what it became, not whatever it is. It's accepting everything as it is, accepting people as they are, accepting the pen as it is, accepting the situation you're in as it is. That's unconditional love. And that unconditional love is the only thing that's real. Everything else is a story. And many times on a spiritual journey, you're all on Insight Timer right now, many times on a spiritual journey, you've been hoodwinked into believing that I have to keep going for everything that is pretty and joyful and peaceful and loving. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but that is all a judgment. But I will say, in A Course in Miracles, there's another lesson that says, I could see peace instead of this, because peace is everywhere. There is peace everywhere. Let's look. Sue, well explained. I feel the same way. Other Sue says, so we just live in a neutral zone, giving no meaning to anything? Yeah. Kyrie says, now I understand why my kids love Disneyland, and I think it's a hurry up and wait. Oh my God, Robert, I love you. A rose by any other name. Robert, do you follow me? I am a huge Shakespeare buff. He knew it all. I could go on and on about Shakespeare, Robert. Huge Shakespeare buff. There's a lot of peace to be found in accepting, but that's not easy to me, but it's like giving up. That's right. But remember, I want to say this really quick. We're kind of off topic just a little bit, but A Course in Miracles has one goal and one goal only, and that's true inner peace. You can only have true inner peace if you stop labeling everything good or bad or right or wrong or peaceful or unhappy or pretty or ugly. That separation of those is what's making you not peaceful. So you can see things differently. You can see it for what it is. But the egoic mind's like, no, because I have to keep my story, because if I don't have my story, then I won't know who I am. Well, you don't know who you are anyway. The Course in Miracles consistently and always keeps coming back to this idea that you don't know who you are, and you don't know who you are because the egoic mind does not know who it is. It thinks it's the story. It's not the story. You're not a story. Let's keep reading. When you say above all else, I want to see this table differently, you are making a commitment to withdraw your preconceived ideas about the table and open your mind to what is and what it is for. You're not defining it in past terms. You're not asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. You are asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. That's a great distinction. You're asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. You are not binding its meaning to your tiny experience of tables, nor are you limiting its purpose to your little personal thoughts. This is brilliant. This is fucking brilliant, because you're not asking, you are asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. This is fucking brilliant, because you do not see life the way it is. You see life the way you are. You don't see your mother the way she is. You see your mother the way you are. This is a cherry diet Pepsi. I'm sure that a lot of people have an opinion about a cherry diet Pepsi. So you're not really seeing a cherry diet Pepsi. You are saying, oh my God, how, you're not saying this, but part of you could be, how could you be spiritual and drink diet soda? That's your shit that you're projecting. I think it's delicious. One of my favorite things in the world. So you don't see you don't see cherry Diet Pepsi the way it is. You see it the way you are. You're not asking cherry Diet Pepsi what it is. You are saying, I have an opinion about cherry Diet Pepsi, and I'm going to project it on you. And then watch this. You're going to project that story about cherry Diet Pepsi onto here, but where else are you going to project it, everybody? Where else are you going to project it? I just gave you a big fucking clue about that. Sorry about sometimes. On me. Oh, that means that this guy Max must not what? Care about his health. He must be very low vibration because he drinks soda and diet soda. Ooh. Take a deep breath. So remember this. You do not go and ask what something is. You tell it what it is. Because you've come in with this story. And this story is right. Do you see why the Course in Miracles is so incredibly perceptive and why it's so important? If you're on a real, true spiritual path, as I burp from my cherry Diet Pepsi, you see why it's important? More respect for Diet Coke. Then there's a whole, yeah, anyway. Okay. I'm going to read this one more time. When you see above else, I want to see this table differently. You are making a commitment to withdraw your preconceived ideas about the table and open your mind to what it is and ask, what is it for? You are not defining it in past terms. You're asking what it is rather than telling it what it is. You're not binding its meaning to your tiny experience of tables, nor are you limiting its purpose to your little personal thoughts. You will not question what you have already defined. And the purpose of these exercises is to ask questions and receive the answers. I always say asking questions is much more important than getting an answer. In saying above all else, I want to see this table differently, you're committing yourself to seeing. It is not an exclusive commitment. It is a commitment that applies to the table just as much as to anything else, neither more nor less. You could, in fact, gain vision from this table if you would withdraw all your ideas from it and look upon it with a completely open mind. It has something to show you, something beautiful and clean and of infinite value, full of happiness and hope. Hidden under all of your ideas about it is its real purpose, the purpose it shares with all the universe. Take a deep breath. So this is really important. It's really important. And if you start to do this in your life, I guarantee you your life is going to change. Gosh, it's amazing to think of a table as a teaching tool for all my stories. Basically, what he's saying is like, if you can do it with one thing, you can do it with everything. This is a process. In the Course in Miracles, it says, removing the blocks to the presence of love. Those blocks are self-induced blocks, are stories you've created, are everything that you put in the way of seeing the truth. Harry says, how much I think I know that I don't know. That's right. Sue says, I'm just a little perplexed. I love perplexion. Is that a word? So, if you drink the Diet Coke and talk, it's Diet Pepsi, and talk about how delicious it is, that's giving meaning to it. Yes. How would you remain neutral to that? No, I'm not neutral to this. I'm not neutral to this. This is one of my favorite things. It doesn't mean that I don't have favorite things. I just know it doesn't mean anything. I'm not going, oh, I'm better than you because I have. It's not. I'm not neutral to this. My character likes this. My character thinks this is great. But I'm not my character. It's just what it is. Liking Diet Pepsi seems to be happening. You don't sit around and just go, nothing means anything. You know that there's a story. You don't have there's nobody here. This is going deeper. But there's no one here to really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Liking these as my favorite pen is just what's happening. I'm not connected to it like, oh my God, right? Sue, does that make sense? On the money. Good. The main thing, everybody, is that this is not about not having happiness or sadness or anger or whatever. It's just that there's no story attached to that thing. Anger happens. But I will say this. The more that the story goes away, the more the meanings go away, the more you don't have a lot of the frustration, expectation, anger. It just, you walk around, the world is very different. Right? Okay. Above all else, I want to see, so think about this. Above all else, when you walk in your life, I want to see this situation differently. Above all else, I want to see this trip differently. Above all else, I want to see this politics differently. Above all else, I want to see my body differently. And not the way you think it should be. What you're looking for is to sit until you find the truth of it. The truth of it. The truth of it. Here's the 3 steps to enlightenment. Sit down, shut up, or I say shut the fuck up. Sit down, shut up, and ask what is true. Take a deep breath.